are now tuned to the podcast and stuff like that.
Are Russian women better than South African?
It depends on your taste, really. After banyana success, the question that I get asked often is, why aren't you, or why isn't Mark Fish? It was a very difficult time, especially considering that when it happened, both my boys were writing the exam.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the podcast and stuff like that. I am your host, Tabisangle Kalakala, and I am chilling with someone that I consider a legend of the game. I'm sure most of you will agree with me. Join me in welcoming Matthew Booth. Matthew, thank you so much for coming through and welcome to the show.
Thanks for the invite, Tabisa.
Matthew Booth.
Cheers, man.
I'm sure I've always wondered how it felt like when you were on the field and the whole crowd is going Booth.
Yeah.
And how did that feel like?
I viewed it as an honor, because I realized, some of the other players that it had it done to them, and those kinds of profiles, Mark Fish, the late John Shuza-Mashweo, Lucas, Khadebe, Roo, so. I suppose I was also pretty lucky to have had an easy surname to say.
but I think it sort of sounds like it's boo when it's actually Booth, like the way they would actually be booing some people. But was that some kind of a motivation for you, to keep going? Did that motivate you?
Yeah, the TH at the end kind of gets lost.
Exactly.
A bit like Beast, for the Springboks, similarly. But I always knew from under 23 that it was a form of encouragement from the fans. So I always joked that even if I had a bad game and they actually did really boo me, I wouldn't know the difference. So it was kind of cool.
So okay, go ahead.
No, but it was a long-standing tradition. From my early days. It's been with me, and it just took a lot of explaining when the foreign media came down to South Africa in 2009, 2010, and they didn't really know much about our culture and what was going on here.
Okay, but did that not also put a little bit of pressure on you? I mean, you've got everyone chanting Booth and,
Yeah, look, the pressure's always there from a young age. I was made captain of the team. That's a certain amount of pressure. The very fact that you're playing for your nation or playing for a high-profile club, that's a certain amount of pressure.
Yeah.
So to be singled out like that, it encouraged me. It pushed me, and whenever I went on the field, I was always concerned about how I left the field and what people thought of me after my performance. And I used that to motivate me as well. So whenever I had a poor game, that following week, I was not happy. I wasn't in a nice space, and I couldn't wait to play the next game to try and redeem myself. And luckily those moments weren't. I can't remember. I can probably name about 5 really bad games that I've had in my entire career. So I've been pretty consistent, I feel, in that regard. And certainly those little things motivated me to be consistent.
But then, okay, I want us to go back to when you first played soccer. Where did that love come from?
So I grew up in a place called Fischhoek in Cape Town. I had my dad and his 3 brothers all played football. At school they played rugby and everything else, but ultimately they played football. So I think it was in my genes. Likewise, when I went to school, I played rugby, tennis, table tennis, cricket. I love my cricket. I miss it. I watch a lot of it. More recently, I've started to watch a lot more rugby as well.
Okay.
But football was kind of my first love, and I progressed in football. So back when I played, you played for your club A team, you made your district team, and then you made your province, which at that time was Western Province.
Okay.
So I kind of, at the age of under 12, under 13 at school and club level, I made my Western Province team, you know. So that in itself kind of gives you that motivation, that push,
keep
you know.
going, yeah.
Unlike cricket, where I played I went to school at a government school, and with cricket at that stage, I don't know what it's like now, but at that stage, basically you had to play for a private school or attend a private school to make the province. Anyway, that was the perception at the time, you know, and so that kind of turned me off continuing to play cricket. But I still love the sport.
Yeah. So, but then, okay, how then do you get into professional football, from playing provincial and so forth?
Yeah, so again, at that stage, you know, the structures were kind of there. They were set in stone, and you knew how to get to the national team. There was a clear pathway.
Okay.
So in Cape Town, there's the famous Bay Hill tournament, which caters for, I think it's under 19s or under 18s. And at the age of 16, 17, I played my first one.
Okay.
And I got spotted by Cape Town Spurs. So that prestigious tournament was like a major magnet for scouts and clubs to come and watch, because all of the top Cape Town teams attended that. So if you were a scout worth your while, you attended the Bay Hill. And likewise, we had a well-structured league where we played competitive football against like versus like teams on a regular basis, you know, in fairly good conditions and good facilities. So that in itself provides the scouts and clubs with good opportunities to scout and to see what talent is available there, you know. And I think, unfortunately, that system has been watered down a little bit in the metros, and outside of your metros in the rural areas, it virtually doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Yeah, that's true. It doesn't exist. So then, but okay, so what are some of the challenges that maybe you faced, you know, as a young boy back in the 90s? Some of us are born in the 90s, so we were definitely young. But what were some of the challenges that you faced, that you had to endure?
I think at primary school, there was a little bit of teasing and bullying because I played soccer. So obviously during that time, it was an all-white school. And rugby and cricket was very prominent. It was pushed, you know. Football wasn't offered. So the fact that I wasn't playing rugby and I was giving preference to club football, and I was athletic and tall, and they wanted me to come play rugby. So there was that, not only the students but also the teachers, you know, putting a lot of pressure on me to come and play rugby. So at some stage I did, but at some stage I kind of turned my back on the sport because of their pressure, you know. And I think that was one of the instances. But the other challenge was, I think, when I signed my first contract, I was still in matric. It was a junior contract with Cape Town Spurs. I lived in Fishhoek, and if you know Cape Town Spurs at that stage trained in Parow. Now that's like that's 2 train trips, you know, that's an hour and an hour, you know. So I had to travel in from Fishhoek to Cape Town CBD to Parow on the train with my books, you know, so that I could study
So
in
you
my
could
matric.
study.
In my matric.
In your matric,
Yeah. So that it took a lot of convincing. My parents were not particularly keen on the idea, but the owners of Spurs convinced them, and I also kind of put my pressure on them. And I think that was a very difficult stage of my career. But I'm glad I did it, because it taught me perseverance and discipline under difficult circumstances. You know?
So then, okay, you in your matric, and then you get that opportunity. Did you ever come to a point where your parents are giving you like sort of a thing like, if you don't do well in matric, because obviously you need to have your matric, if you don't do well, then you would definitely have to drop?
Yeah, that was one of the threats, but they didn't put unnecessary pressure on me. Yeah, they just wanted me to, like anything in life, and that's something that I teach my boys, is that, you know, once you commit to something, you know, you've got to go through with it. There's no pulling out halfway through.
Yeah.
And that's a very important lesson which every kid should learn. Once you commit, you give it your best. You might not be good at it,
100%.
but you need to give it your best. And I often see young kids nowadays not making the A team,
Yeah.
and their parents pulling them out of the club and taking them to another club, and then it carries on going like that, and they end up getting taught a very bad lesson in life.
That you have to live things.
You have to persevere. It's so important to persevere, and I see it with professionals as well, where players in the changing room will say, the coach doesn't like me, or there's too much politics in this club,
I'm not
stuff
getting
like
game
that.
time.
I'm not getting game time.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, are you spending an extra 10 or 15 minutes after training perfecting your craft? What are you doing to get yourself back in the team?
Are you fighting for your sport?
Exactly. And that's a characteristic which is lacking big time.
So who did you look up to then? Going through that, I'm sure there was somebody that you were looking up to that's already playing soccer.
So my dad was spent a lot of time with me doing extra training up at the local school field or at the club. So I was always grateful for that. He was the one that taught me how to header a ball, eyes
nice.
open, mouth closed at sort of 5 or 6 years old,
Okay.
And then also he always harped on at me about my left foot, improving my left foot. What you do with your right, you've got to do with your left.
Your left.
And that's helped me immensely. And I've often heard little comments from people who would always say to me, "But Matthew, why does it look like you've got so much time on the ball?" And it's because I'm not afraid to use my left foot.
Okay.
So you're not always favoring your right.
You're right. So
and
you can
always
basically use both. Yeah.
Yes. And so the angles, you're not getting closed down by the angles, etc. So if you can equal both left and right, you're going to go a long way in football.
Okay. So then, fast forward. Then you Cape Town City. After that, before we get to that, I read somewhere that your father was an engineer. Is an engineer.
Yeah. He's not a qualified one, but through a degree, but through experience.
Through experience.
He's a roads engineer, and he worked for the city of Cape Town for over 40 years.
Okay. He was civil.
Yeah, civil engineer. Yeah.
Okay.
In the roads department. So when he retired, like most experienced people, he got asked to come back and extend his stay. But he spent most of his life at that institution, and likewise, the rest of his life he spent at the Fishhook Football Club, AFC Association Football Club. So he spent a lot of time giving back to the community, and whether as a player or a chairman on the committee. And that's something that I've learned from him as well, is that, you might have your career where you make money and stuff like that, but it's very important to give back to your community as well.
It seems like you really look up to your father, and he's been there. How important do you think it is for our fathers to be there? For fathers to be there for their sons. How important do you think that is?
It's extremely important. Unfortunately, not enough of our kids have that opportunity, or have the good fortune. Ideally, you want to have both parents in your lives, but I've on the flip side, I've seen very incredible characters who have a good nature, who are well balanced, hardworking, who have come from single parents households. So it's kind of what you make of it, But in an ideal situation, you want a good balance in life, and so to have your mum and dad there and come and watch you and take part in your growth, I think that can only do you wonders.
Yeah. So, then you went to Russia. Please tell me about that move.
Yeah, so I was at Sundowns by that stage, and we were coached by Viktor Bondarenko.
Okay.
And he comes from a city in the south of Russia called Rostov. and they were struggling, the club, and so they contacted Victor asking him for some players, and he recommended myself and Gift Kampamba, who was my teammate at Sundowns, the Zambian international. So after much negotiating and me really being reluctant to go because I didn't know anything about the Russian league, this was in 2002. I didn't know anything about Rostov. I eventually took the chance to go. I realized that I wasn't getting any younger, and that if I wanted to make some real cash, I needed to make foreign currency.
How old were you at the time?
That was 2002. So that would have been
20?
Yeah, it would have been 26, around about 26,
okay.
27. And so it ended up being a very good move. But I took a chance at the time. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And myself and Gift had had an immediate impact on the team. They were rock bottom in a 16-team league with 10 games to go.
The top league, the Russian top league.
The Premier League. With 10 games to go, the first 9 games we didn't lose. And by the time we had 3 or 4 games to go, we were safe. So we set a very good precedent for... Well, actually, Jacob Legeto kind of paved the way. The late Jacob Legeto paved the way for us. And then the impact on myself and Gift had kind of paved the way for a group of maybe 10 South Africans that eventually came to Russia over the next couple of seasons. Some had very good careers, like Macbeth Sibaya, who spent a further 8 years in Rubin Kazan, playing Champions League. And then a couple of others who kind of got injured or didn't play regularly. So it was a great time to be there. I spent 2 years in Rostov, and then went to a team who at the time was deemed to be more established, and spent 4 years at Krylia Sovetov. So 6 years in total in Russia, and then returned to South Africa in 2008.
Okay, but wait, so you go to Russia, obviously you don't know Russian.
No.
Okay.
I know nothing about the country, yeah.
And okay, can you speak Russian now? Russian now?
Да, конечно. Я говорю, у тебя?
Hey, what are you saying?
Yes, no, I speak it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, but now, okay, you get there. The only language obviously you speak is English. How was that about? How was that for you?
It was very difficult. Luckily, they gave myself and Gift a translator. But having said that was actually a mistake, because we would have learned the language quicker if we didn't have a translator.
Yeah.
So I didn't learn it within 2 years. I didn't learn it very quickly. Only the last kind of 4 years, when I moved to Samara, did I actually learn it properly. And then I was kind of fluent when I left.
Really?
But then, of course, when you return to South Africa and you don't practice it, and so I've lost quite a bit of it.
But wait, did you go to school for it, or was it just like you learning as you hearing people speak?
You just learn as you.
Really?
I could have done that, but I mean, some guys who were single, they could have gotten a girlfriend, a local girlfriend. They would have learnt it quicker. That's probably the best way to learn a language.
Yeah. So did you have one?
No, I wasn't available.
Oh, you were not available.
No,
you were married.
I wasn't married, but
but you had
I was with my wife.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were living together.
Oh, she also left with you.
So she was studying at the time.
Okay.
And then eventually she came to join me.
Okay.
And when she saw how beautiful the women were in Russia, she said, "Yeah, I'll definitely stay."
Are Russian women better than South African?
It depends on your taste, really. I mean, they're all very thin and model looking. You know, they have beautiful features, and I think that can be said about most Eastern European women.
Okay.
Poles, Czechs, Bulgarians, Russians, Ukrainians. They have similar features.
So basically, they have no meat.
Yeah. So they what I found was that they they drink quite a lot, and they smoke. At the time, they smoked, and they didn't eat a lot. So that kind of helped to keep them their figure. But yeah, I mean, it depends what your taste in women is like. I mean, you know, I've traveled the globe, and there's a number of countries who have very attractive women, and South Africa is definitely one of them, because
I agree, definitely.
there's a variety of. I mean, we're very lucky as men. There's a variety of different women here in South Africa. You know, but yeah, it's Russia's known for it being very cold. The people drink a lot. There's bears, and they're beautiful women, and those are kind of the stereotypes that are given to Russia, and it's because it's true. It's very cold there. It's very cold. I mean, the cold was another thing that we had to adapt to. So what the Russian teams generally do is, if they get a player from South America or Africa, they will bring them on trial in June and July, which is their summer.
Okay.
So it's nice and warm, and the sun is shining, and you think, oh, this is great, you know. Where do I sign?
Yeah.
Where do I sign? So you sign, everything's nice until you start to get to the Russian winter. And, you know, in December, January, February, where I was living in Samara, I experienced minus 35 degrees.
Minus 35? We've never had that in South Africa.
No.
I don't think we've even had it in any country in Africa.
You don't want that.
Minus 35.
For 2 weeks, the city would close down. Your cell phone doesn't work.
Because of the temperature?
Because of the temperature. And when you walk outside, you have to keep on flicking the ice out the corners of your eyes, because it freezes in the corner of your eye.
That's terrible.
So it's rough. But again, a fantastic experience, fantastic education, and for any young kid, boy or girl, who gets an opportunity to travel, they must go. You know.
And then what about the food? Because obviously you come from South Africa, you're used to braai and all that. And
the Russian cuisine is not the best. It's not known. It's a bit like the British. You know, they don't. People laugh and scorn at the British food because it's virtually non-existent. So in Russia, you get very famous dishes, but generally overall the cuisine is not like well known. So I found the food in the south of Russia was very tasty, and that is because they have an influence from Asia. So Kazakhstan, Chechnya, sort of your southern areas. There's a Middle Eastern influence, a Muslim and Middle Eastern influence in their cuisine, and that's a lot more tasty. But food was a slight issue. But likewise, when you travel again, or if you live in a different city, there's often restaurants that cater to your taste. But
wait, so they don't have Russians there?
They don't have
Russians.
Oh. No, I didn't want to mention that, because if you try to explain that a sausage in South Africa is named after a Russian to a Russian, then we might get into a bit of a fist fight. So that's a bit of a strange one, because I've never known why a Russian is called a Russian.
I'm also wondering.
Strange.
It's very strange. But then, okay, so when your woman went to Russia with you, did she also learn the language, or was it just something that you did alone?
Yeah, no, Sonia attempted to learn the language, and it was important for not only her but myself to try and assimilate with the locals. You know, so you can't go there, earn Russian money, and then not attempt to fit in.
Yeah, correct.
I think that's something that players, anybody living overseas, must try to do. Try to learn the language, try to learn the culture, and not just take their money. That's very important. You can't be arrogant about it.
Okay, that's true. Okay, but speaking about women, you are okay, well, so your wife is a black lady. Are you like into black ladies, or what's going on there?
No, I don't. I have a wide range of tastes.
Okay.
I don't have a particular.
You don't know particular.
No.
Okay. Then fast forward. You come to back to South Africa, just before the. Okay, then we go to the World Cup. You made it to the is it 23 men, I think, right? The
Yes.
squad, but you didn't get to play. But anyway, you were part of the team, and how was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so I've been involved with 3 World Cups. The '97 Junior World Cup,
Oh,
under
under
20s.
20s.
That was in Malaysia, and then the 2002 World Cup where I got selected, but I got injured on the way there.
Oh, it's a bummer.
And then the 2010 World Cup, which obviously we didn't need to qualify for.
Yeah.
I got selected for that and didn't play. So the Under 20 World Cup, I played all the games, and then in the Olympics, I played all the games. So those kind of were my 2 big tournaments, and the Confederations Cup in 2009.
Yeah.
But from a World Cup point of view and an AFCON point of view, when I look back, I'm disappointed that I never got to experience those 2 actually to play. So that will always disappoint me.
Also, in 2002, you had the injury, so then you were obviously not part of it.
So actually, what happened was I took part in Carlos Queiroz's AFCON in 2002 in Mali.
Okay.
He got fired shortly after that, despite him having qualified us for Japan and Korea. Joe Masono took over, and he didn't select me. And then Mark Fish got injured. He then called me up.
Oh, okay.
I, in turn, on the way there, we played a tournament in Hong Kong, a warm-up tournament, and I got injured there. So then the late Jacob Legeto replaced me.
You.
So, yeah, that was a bitter pill to swallow. But at the time, it was still quite early in my career, so I didn't think much of it. It was disappointing, yes. But now that I've retired and I look back, that was one of my worst moments of my careers, because it was a huge opportunity to experience it.
So if there's a young kid right now that obviously wants to play soccer, what advice would you give to those kids?
Chase your dream. I mean, due to soccer, I've been able to live a very comfortable life. I've been able to travel.
You drive a beautiful car. Yeah,
it's not mine. It's the bank's. It's the bank's. It's given me an education. I've learned a language. I've been able to travel. That's what football's given me. So I would encourage any young boy or girl to take up the sport. But it's, the one thing that I can say is that when I grew up, I was always like the 3rd or 4th best player in my team. And so number 1, 2, and 3, because they lacked a certain something.
Which you had?
Which I had.
What was that?
And that was perseverance and a competitive spirit. I was very competitive. Eventually, number 1 dropped out. Maybe he found a girlfriend or spent more time with her, or,
or alcohol, maybe.
Alcohol, drugs, PlayStation. There's many distractions, I eventually became the one. I'm the one that got scouted. I'm the one that became a professional from my team.
Yeah.
And so they must bear that in mind. Especially, and another thing which I like to say is that kids that grow up on golf estates or go to private school or come from sort of your upper middle class, you've got competition. So if you want to make it in sport, particularly football, you've got to up your game, because there are 100 kids that are more hungrier than you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In ratio, who don't have the distractions that you have. And so if you want to make it,
and maybe they're looking at football as the only way out of the townships and things like that, so that makes them have become more hungry.
Exactly. It's a messaging that I have to tell my boys, because they came from a comfortable background, and I say, I keep on reminding them, hey, there's 100 boys behind you who are hungrier than you. How much do you want it? Do you want it? Okay, let's see. You know, and so that's a constant messaging for me. And you know, from a kid from a lower LSM background, I don't need to motivate him. I don't. It's their, you know, their circumstances motivate them. You know, I just perhaps need to give them guidance and
support.
to support an opportunity. That's what most kids are lacking in South Africa is opportunity. Because let's be honest, I mean, any boy and girl in South Africa just wants a chance to shine.
That's true. Yeah.
You know, and they're not. I'm afraid they're not given that. Not enough opportunity.
So then, you've always been a defender, or have you played any other position?
So as a youngster, I used to play striker, then midfield. But at the age of about under 12, under 13, they moved me to the back. And that's where I played. Yeah.
Where do you think they moved you to back? Were you scoring a lot of goals there? Or?
I was.
Obviously, you've got height. You're almost 2 meters tall, so that's an advantage.
I was, but I was like taking all the free kicks, taking the goal kicks, taking the throw-ins. You know, scoring goals. And at that age, there's a certain age where you have to kind of. It's good that kids play a variety of different positions before they get to under 12, under 13. But once you hit that kind of age, 12, 13, 14, you need to settle in a position. And so I think that was the reasoning by me moving to the back.
But why were you taking all the corners and things like? Because obviously we needed somebody with your height in the box.
Yeah, I know. It was just kind of I was good at kicking long balls, and my range of pass was probably one of the best on the team at the time. And in my competitive nature, I wanted to do everything as well.
Yeah.
And the coach allowed me to do that, but that shouldn't have been the case, you know. And then at a certain age, 13, 14, I got pushed to the back. I was playing with more competent players that surrounded me, so the load was shared, you know. But I had a very good upbringing when it came to football education, playing at Fishhoek from the age of 5 years old to 16, 17. And that again is something which our kids lack, is a good amateur club that is able to provide you with facilities, regular game time, good, decent coaching, and a safe environment to enjoy yourself in.
You retired after that, and then you are now an analyst, right?
Yep.
So you never wanted to be a coach or something? Why specifically?
I've thought about it.
I think you'd make a good coach, because after hearing everything you're saying, I can see why you've got the leadership, qualities. You always persevered. You always wanted to be the best. So I think you'd really make a good coach.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind trying it. First of all, I need to get my badges, my licenses. I've only got a D license, a Safa D license.
Okay. How do those work? How do they go?
So you start off with a D, which a D should allow you to host a festival of it's like a big coaching clinic for young kids, and it teaches you how to organize that. Your C license is your next one up in the ladder, and that should allow you to coach with at an amateur club with young kids.
Okay.
So perhaps 5 to 12 to 13 years old. Your B license then allows you to coach older kids plus seniors, and your A license and then your pro license should allow you to coach with semi-pros and professionals. But it doesn't. That's an ideal world. That doesn't really happen because Safa don't really police the system, and therefore sometimes we get coaches in the PSL who don't have any qualifications.
Any of
those.
Okay.
But they are trying to change that now, and they're quite right. They should change it, but at the same time they have to make sure that they offer enough coaching workshops so that everybody has a chance to become qualified. And that's kind of been a gripe of mine, that they haven't really offered them on a regular basis. I see an uptake now or just over the last year, which is good to see.
Mm.
I think they finally sorted out their issues with CAF and what have you. So, to answer your question, dealing with some of the club owners and their mentality towards football, I find it with 80% of the club owners, it's kind of my money. I'm putting it into the club. I want instant results, and anyone that's been in education or sport development will understand that that's never going to work. It's never going to work. It doesn't work at Man City, where money it doesn't.
It doesn't work anyway.
It doesn't work anyway. And so, to put that unreasonable pressure on a head coach, it's no wonder that there's such a high turnover of coaches. There are certain clubs who don't take that attitude, who are football knowledgeable, who are knowledgeable about football. Obviously, Chiefs, Pirates, Sundowns now. I'd probably say SuperSport, Cape Town Spurs, Stellenbosch, Cape Town City, to a certain extent. And then you kind of think, well, are there any others? Perhaps I missed out a couple, but the other clubs just seem like they demand instant results, and they like to interfere in the starting lineup, and I wouldn't be able to deal with that. Yeah.
I think I've got it. There's another club that I'm thinking about that does that, but okay, it's fine. Let's not dwell much on it. Okay, so I want to talk about something. When you in your prime years, social media was not really the big thing. Now we've got social media. Obviously, if you've got a bad game, you're gonna see a lot of it on social media and so on. What do you think that is affecting the young guys, young professionals?
It's difficult to tell. I think if I was in their position now, I would have a social media profile, but I wouldn't read the comments.
Okay, so you block the comments.
I just wouldn't read them.
But aren't you going to be curious?
No.
Okay.
That's the thing. I wouldn't want to be curious. So I would put out my profile there so that people that like me or hate me or don't can follow me.
Yeah.
And you can also use your profile as messaging. So you can punt anything that you want to sell or any cause that you want to promote. So in that regard, it can be a good thing. So I would encourage players to have a social media presence, but it's the management of that is so important. And players have to realize that social media is a facade.
Yeah.
People go there to vent, to make jokes, but when it comes to face,
it's a different ball game.
It's a completely different ball game, and players must understand that. And it's a fake world to a large extent, but it does have its uses. But it's been kind of perverted to some extent. But I would definitely recommend that they have a presence.
So a couple of months ago, you trended speaking about social media, right? And obviously for personal reasons, but I don't know. But I'd say that maybe that was really that might have jeopardized your reputation and so on. How did you overcome that?
With great difficulty, and I think it's a lesson learned. I think one of the lessons was that people get sucked into a single narrative, and they believe that narrative very easily, despite the other side being quiet. And that for me was quite concerning from a social point of view. But it was a very difficult time, especially considering that when it happened, both my boys were writing their exams.
Yeah.
But we push on. I think I got very good advice. I got a lot of good support from my male and female friends who have interacted with me, and they know my character. So that was very helpful at the time. Yeah.
But then how then do you shield the boys from this? Because it's another thing that I want to talk about, because I've got a daughter as well, but I'm realizing that as parents we have a responsibility to shield our kids from from social media. How do we do that?
Which is what we did, both of us, up until that stage.
Who's both of us? You and your wife?
Myself and my wife.
Okay.
We were very private up until that stage, and that's what was so disappointing. And I would recommend that most couples, I think, allow their children to have a social media presence when they reach adulthood.
Okay.
That's what I would encourage. Allow them to have a phone when they get to high school.
But that's almost in the days of today.
Well,
the days of it's almost impossible.
Yeah, but that's up to you.
Yeah.
It's possible if you're the parent and you insist and you explain. You see that we can't just drift along and accept what we know is perhaps wrong. And so both our boys received their phones when they got to grade 8.
Okay.
They weren't allowed any social media profiles.
But can you manage kids though? Because sometimes kids do sneaky things. They can get it behind your back.
Yeah, no, we caught them out a couple of times, and they got punished for it. And we had to explain to them why, which again is very ironic if you consider what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something that you live and learn. I wish it didn't happen, but we carry on. But from the one thing that I've also learned is that they're very resilient, and so and they're strong, and
that's a spirit they got from you.
Well, they were well brought up by both of us.
Yeah.
By both of us. So, they're well-mannered young boys, and I'm glad that hasn't changed. And the oldest one is just left for the US on a football scholarship.
Oh, that's nice.
My younger one who's 14. He's very competitive and sporty, doing pretty well with his academics, which he definitely didn't get from me.
So it must be from the mom.
But yeah, so they're good guys, So I'm happy with their progress and their development and their character.
Okay, that's good. It's actually a very beautiful one about your elders, being to the USA and so on. Seems like it's following in your footsteps. Okay, so the toughest striker that you've ever had to face as a defender, obviously.
I always loved a physical battle, so guys who were kind of my size. But the ones I dreaded the most were the shorties, the speedy shorties. So the guys like when I played for Spurs against Sundowns, and I had to come up against Daniel Modau.
Okay, Daniel Modau.
He was always a handful. Somebody who was a lot quicker than me was Siyabonga Nomvete. So against Chiefs, I always had to struggle with him, even though I trained a lot with him at under 23s.
Yeah,
he was always difficult to mark. And yeah, who else? There were a couple of quick, speedy Russian strikers. Kezhikov in Russia, who was a short national team striker.
Guys, yeah.
Wagner Love, who was a Brazilian international who played in Russia against me for CSKA Moscow. So yeah, there were. I generally had to be, because as a defender, if you realize that somebody is quicker than you, you've then got to give them a little bit more space, so that if the ball is played in behind you, you can possibly get there before then.
Okay, yeah.
But the risk to that is that if they get it to feet, now you a couple of meters off them. Now they can turn if they want, and then
And
run,
when they turn, then it becomes
then start to run at you. So there's always that balancing act and trying to get that distance right. And as you mature as a defender, you start to get that right more and more often. Yeah.
Okay. Quick one: Messi versus Ronaldo.
Messi.
Why Messi? I want to know your choice. Why?
So anybody watches a game, they look for different qualities. Right? Your what attracts you to football is probably different to what makes. So for me, the fact that he's able to use both feet, low center of gravity, he has incredible vision. His passing range is unbelievable. He scores such beautiful goals while bringing his teammates into the move as well. And so it's not necessarily just Messi brilliance, but he brings other actors into the play.
Game, yeah.
And that I enjoy watching him because of that too.
Because I saw even in the US he's doing wonders there. He's an excellent player. I think I'm not really following that league, but I don't think they were doing so well. But as soon as he got there, and then you have Jordi Alba, you've got Busquets, it becomes something else. It reminds me of prime Barcelona to some extent.
Yes, well, that's the thing. I like the Americans' perseverance because the original American League failed, in I think the 70s, 80s, so disappeared,
Okay.
And then they tried it again in 96. And they tried to bring in different concepts into the game, and it kind of also disappeared, Now with the re-emergence again, with the World Cup coming up in 3 or 4 years' time, they seem to have heightened the game there as well. And I think the women's game in the US has got to take a lot of credit as well for that.
Yeah.
Because the dominant women's team over the last 30 years has been the USA, and they've got it right in terms of their offering at schools and universities, and that's why they've dominated for the last 30 years. And way back in 1978, the USA legislated for equal spend. So whatever you spent on men's sport,
so you have
to spend on women's support.
Okay.
And they decided, because American football you can't do, there is no women's American football. Ice hockey, there isn't any. Basketball, yes. Baseball, no. So they decided to put a large amount of that money into women's football, soccer.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that we need for our country as well?
Without a doubt. I mean, after Banyana's success, everybody started talking about professionalizing the game for the women. And yes, I agree, but that's not the most important element that's missing from the women's game. The most important element is being able to give an opportunity to a young girl at school or at club level who's 5 or 6 years old, the opportunity to play regular football, coached by a decent coach. That's what we've got to be offering them. And let's be honest, most young boys don't have that opportunity, let alone a young girl. So if we can get that right and plot their progress, and I'm not talking about just Johannesburg, I'm talking about all around the country.
Yeah, the entire country.
And this is where perhaps our government and Safa get it wrong. This is the difficult part. It's all very well to plan, to write up a nice document. Blah, blah, we're going to do this, professionalize this, not. This is the most difficult part. Is to offer a kid in Butterworth, Eastern Cape, a good facility to play at. Good coach who knows what he's talking about, or she knows what she's talking about, and to offer regular competitive football. And we're not getting that right. If we can get it right, what will happen is that we will expand our pool of talent like 1,000-fold. 1,000-fold, if we can get that right.
Yeah.
The women deserve a professional league, without a doubt.
Definitely, because also, if you look at the teams like your England, the English national team, A lot of those ladies play for Chelsea, they play for Man City and so forth. Yeah, so that's another.
But that's not the most important element. The most important element to development is to create that pool of talent. There's no point in having a professional league if there's no depth.
Okay, yeah.
You know, and imagine what could be if we give our coaches an opportunity to choose from a pool of talent which is maximized. You know, we haven't maximized our pool of talent. No ways. You think if you look at Bafana and our FIFA rankings, a country of 50 million plus, where football is the number one sport, and we have so much talent at grassroots, and yet we're sitting at what, 60?
The last time I checked, it was 50 something.
50 something. You know, we've improved slightly. We were like 13th in Africa or whatever. No, that's not good enough.
But I think we should be number one in Africa. Man. We can be.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, we can regain our 1996 standings, you know, where we were in the top 20 in the world, and we were regularly in the top 3 in Africa. I mean, that's us. That should be us.
But speaking about the 1996 team, briefly, what do you think went wrong? Because, I mean, we already had that team which won AFCON. I mean, that should have been something that maybe we built on. So what do you think went wrong?
I think Safa's decision at the time to get rid of Clive Barker was a mistake. If you remember correctly, he won the Nations Cup for us. They then went to the Confederations Cup in 1997. Again, just before the World Cup. You see, it was almost like they were already plotting. You know, to me, it looked like they were plotting his demise. So they didn't do particularly well at the Confederations Cup in 1997. They gave him the sack. They brought in Philip Troussier, who was an absolute disaster just before the 1998 World Cup. I think that was our watershed moment.
Then I think it comes back to what you were saying when you were saying we're not patient when it comes to the coach. I mean, he won the AFCON. They didn't do well in the Confed, but I mean, you could have given him a chance to go to the World Cup.
Yes.
You know, I think
one of the reasons why the women's game has flourished, even though they don't have a lot of resources, they haven't been given the respect, they haven't been given resources. But one of the reasons why they flourished is because there's no money in their game. As soon as you bring money into the game, this type of attitude prevails. Where come a World Cup or an AFCON, all of a sudden now the dynamic changes. You know, now you're firing coaches, now you're bringing in players, now you agents are involved, blah blah blah. You know, you've got to allow the process to be a natural one. If you corrupt the process, success will not follow you. You know, you've got to allow the process to follow, to be natural. If you're going to corrupt it, you won't achieve success. I can guarantee you it. Whether that's because of karma or whatever, it won't work. And I just feel, again, you know, when you look at Carlos Queiroz, qualifies us for 2002 Japan and Korea. Then in Nations Cup we get knocked out by the hosts in the quarterfinals. They get rid of him because of supposed racism within the team. And then you bring in another coach to take over for 2002. You know, it just
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, and that's why I've always said we shouldn't have politicians in our game. We should have a minister of sport who kind of can manage here and there if there's issues, but otherwise they should stay away from the game, and we shouldn't have those political types being our president or CEO. Definitely not. You should have qualified administrators who run administrative roles, and then you should have the likes of Lucas Khadebes, etc., who
the Mark Fish,
who are qualified, but they need to be qualified to hold their positions. It can't just be a name. You know, they've got to first of all want to be there, and they've got to be qualified themselves. But do players have the opportunity to become qualified in that role? You know, and that's something which we should definitely work on while we are playing. we should be getting ourselves in a position where we can be in those roles. Not enough of us are. And there's lots of the question that I get asked often is, why aren't you, or why isn't Mark Fish, or why isn't Lucas part of Safa? I say I'll have to explain to them, well, there's only really two ways that we can do that. One is if Danny Jordan says, come Lucas, let me show you the ropes. I'll show you how it's done, and mentor him into a role of some sort. But that's not going to happen, because I've always felt that Safa are very protective of their environment. So unless you're one of their...
So do you think it's possible that they're hiding something, or they've got a system that they need to protect from?
No, it's a power thing. I don't know, but it's a power thing. They want to hold on to their positions. They don't want to be threatened by outside forces. The second way of getting into those roles is that you become involved in an amateur club. You become chairman of that amateur club. You then become involved in the local region. You become chairman or president of the region. You get onto the Safa's NEC, and then you have a chance to perhaps be voted in as president. But how long is that going to take?
That's a long time.
Exactly.
That's a very long time.
You're looking at 10 to 20
Yeah,
years'
it's a very
time.
long
That's a
time.
long game.
So you've spoken a lot about South African football history. I've got a little game that I want to play with you, because
Wow.
I can tell that you know. Okay, so I'm going to read it out to you, and then you're going to answer me, right? I'm a Zambian. I have played for Sundowns, Pirates, and Chiefs. I've scored 35 goals in one season at Chiefs. Who am I?
There's only one.
Who?
Mbuzuma.
Okay, let's talk about him.
Yeah.
You faced him before, right?
I not a lot, because when he came to prominence, I was in Russia.
Oh,
So I think I could have played against him once or twice, but yeah.
he was very dangerous striker.
No, he was top notch. On his if you got in the way of that left foot, you were in trouble.
Exactly. Okay, number two. But this one is simple. Which coach led Bafana to 96 victory? You've already said it.
Yeah.
It's like Baka. How many times have Mamelodi Sundowns won the SA League?
Oof, that's a good one. The modern PSL. Or
Let's
the
both the national. What was it called? National Premier League.
Yes,
NSL.
NSL.
NSL, PSL. Let's combine the two.
I think the modern PSL is at 13.
13th, correct.
But I wouldn't be able to tell you. I think in the old days, perhaps 5 times.
That's too much.
Too much.
Yeah. It's actually 3. So that's 3,
Three, yeah.
3, 13. So that's 16.
Oh, 16. Wow.
Yeah, so at least you
Okay.
got 2.
I
Okay.
got half a point there.
Exactly. Okay. So I want to ask you this, right? You, Matthew Booth, you've done all you've done. You, like I said, I consider you a legend of the game. And what do you want people to remember you as?
I think as a good, a decent professional footballer who gave his all for his nation, and more importantly, gave back to the community that gave him so much.
Okay. Speaking about giving back to the community, I saw there's a Booth education thing that you're doing. Tell me about that. What's up with that?
So I'm involved in 2 MPOs, the South African Football Legends and the Booth Education and Sports Africa. So one is basically supporting ex-players and keeping them busy. And the other one is basically designing bespoke football clinics,
Oh.
infrastructure builds and events. So yeah, that's actually a MPO and a PTY limited. But yeah, those are the sort of vehicles that I use to give back.
Okay. Before we close, can I please ask you to give me okay, now obviously the season just started. Give me top 3 teams that you think we will see at the end of the season.
Look, I think Sundowns are still number 1. They're probably going to be about 10. They seem to be running away with it now, but I think when they get into the Champions League, they might be able to be tripped up a couple of times. So I think they've got 10 points over Pirates.
Yeah, it's some of this.
So Pirates second.
Okay. And Chiefs?
And I wouldn't say Chiefs in the top three. I would say SuperSport has been very consistent, and I think they could very well take the third spot. But I think Chiefs are showing very positive signs. But somehow I doubt they will be in the top three.
You doubt. So are they going to beat Sundowns today?
No ways.
Why does it sound like you're a Sundowns fan?
No, I'm going on form. Yeah. I'm a neutral.
Okay.
I'm going on form.
But
Yeah.
that's set for us because I was hoping you're going to say yes.
Look, I mean, from a neutral's point of view, it would be great if Chiefs causes an upset, or somebody else wins the league. But just looking at the form, cup football is very different. You can't really go on form. Having said that, but with regards to the league, I think the Sundowns definitely by 10 points. I think Chiefs. I wouldn't have said Chiefs was going to win a cup this season, but their last two games that they've played, they're going to prove me wrong.
I hope so. I hope they prove you wrong. All right. I think that'll bring us to the end of the show. I don't know if maybe there's something that you think I left that you want to share.
No. You've covered all the bases, and yeah, it was good chatting with you.
Thank you, man. Thank you for coming through. So, guys, that's all that we had for you on the podcast and stuff like that. Please don't forget to like, subscribe.